Reunited at last. The alien queen. Wept as her daughter stepped into her arms, Doctor. Sarah Chen pushed her glasses up her nose and stared at the screen in front of her. The numbers didn't make sense. She had been studying the same test results for 3 hours, but they still looked wrong. "This can't be right," she whispered to herself. Sarah worked on the human research ship called Harmony. Her job was to study alien life forms. She was very good at her work. But today, something strange was happening. The test results were from a young woman named Zara. Zara lived on the ship with her family. Everyone thought she was human. She looked human. She acted human. She had grown up with humans her whole life. But the test results said something different. Sarah picked up her coffee cup and took a sip. The coffee was cold now. She had been working too long, but she couldn't stop. These results were too important. 3 weeks ago, the Harmony had visited a planet called Vextos. The people there were called the Vexhari. They were tall and had blue skin. Their eyes were silver, and they could make beautiful music with their voices. The Vexhari were friends with humans, but it was a new friendship. Both sides were still learning about each other. The visit had gone well. The Vexhari leaders had been kind and helpful. During the visit, Zara had helped with translation work. She was good with languages. Sarah had taken some tissue samples from everyone on the translation team. This was normal. She always did this after visiting new planets, to make sure no one had picked up any strange diseases. All the other samples had come back normal. Human DNA, just as expected. But Zara's sample was different. Very different. Sarah pulled up the genetic chart on her computer. She compared Zara's DNA to the human database. 0 match. Then she compared it to the Vexhari database that their new allies had shared with them. Perfect match. "How is this possible?" Sarah asked the empty lab. She ran the test again. Same result. She checked her equipment. Everything was working correctly. She ran a third test using a different sample from Zara. The answer was the same every time. Zara was not human. She was Vexhari. Sarah leaned back in her chair and tried to think. Zara had been found 15 years ago when she was just a little girl. The human ship explorer had discovered a damaged alien vessel floating in space. Most of the ship had been destroyed, but they found one survivor, a small child who looked human. The child couldn't remember anything about her past. She didn't even remember her real name. The rescue team had called her Zara because it was the first word she had said that sounded like a name. Tom and Linda Henderson, 2 crew members on the Explorer, had adopted her. They raised her as their own daughter. Zara grew up happy and loved. She went to human schools and made human friends. She dreamed of exploring space just like her adopted parents. Now Sarah realized that everyone had been wrong. The damaged ship hadn't been carrying a human child. It had been carrying a Vexhari child who somehow looked human. But there was more. Sarah had been comparing Zara's DNA to the general Vexhari database, but now she decided to check something else. The Vexhari had also shared some royal family records with the humans as part of their new friendship agreement. Sarah pulled up those files and began comparing Zara's genetic markers to the Vexhari royal family. Her hands started shaking. There was a match. Not just any match, but a perfect parent-child genetic match with someone very important, Empress Cathara, the ruler of the Vexhari Empire. Sarah stared at the screen. According to these results, Zara was the daughter of the Vexhari Empress. She was a princess. Sarah remembered the stories she had heard during their recent visit to Vextos. The Vexhari had told them about their sad history. 20 years ago, there had been a terrible civil war. Many people had died. During the fighting, Empress Cathara's young daughter had disappeared. The Empress had searched for years. She had sent ships across the galaxy looking for any sign of her child, but they never found anything. Most people believed the princess was dead. The Empress had never married again. She had no other children. This was causing problems for the Vexhari Empire. Without an heir, some people were starting to question who should rule when the Empress died. Sarah looked at her test. Results again. If these were correct, the missing princess wasn't dead. She was alive and well, living on a human ship. She had been raised by humans and thought she was human. But what should Sarah do with this information? She thought about Zara. The young woman was happy with her life. She loved her adopted parents. She had friends and dreams and plans for the future. Learning that she was actually an alien princess would change everything. Sarah also thought about the political situation. The Vexhari Empire was having troubles. Different groups were fighting about who should have power. If they knew the real princess was alive, it might solve some problems. Or it might create new ones. What if some Vexhari didn't want Zara to come back? What if they tried to hurt her? What if bringing her back started another war? Sarah saved her files and locked her computer. This was too big a decision for her to make alone. She needed to talk to Captain Rivera, the leader of the Harmony, but first she wanted to do one more thing. She wanted to watch Zara and see if there were any signs that she might not be human. Sarah had known Zara for several years, but she had never really paid attention to small details. Sarah left her lab and walked to the ship's cafeteria. It was dinner time, and she knew Zara would be there with her friends. She found Zara sitting at a table with 3 other young people. They were laughing about something. Zara's laugh was musical and clear. Sarah had always thought Zara was pretty, but now she looked more carefully. Zara's skin was very pale, almost white. Her hair was so blonde it was nearly silver. Her eyes were light blue, but in certain light, they seemed to have a silver shine to them. These were all features that could be human, but they were also features that matched the Vexhari. How had no one noticed this before? As Sarah watched, one of Zara's friends started humming a song. Without thinking, Zara joined in. But her voice created harmonies that seemed impossible for a human throat to make. The other young people stopped and stared at her in surprise. "How do you do that?" one of them asked. Zara looked confused. "Do what?" "That harmony thing with your voice. It sounded like 3 people singing at once." Zara blushed. "I don't know. I've always been able to do that. I thought everyone could." Sarah felt her heart beating faster. The Vexhari were famous for their ability to create complex harmonies with their voices. It was one of their most distinctive features. She had seen enough. Tomorrow, she would talk to Captain Rivera. Tonight, she would prepare her report and think about how to handle this situation carefully. The missing Vexhari princess was alive. She was living among humans, and she had no idea who she really was. Sarah looked at Zara one more time. The young woman was still laughing with her friends, completely unaware that her life was about to change forever. Everything depended on what happened next. Captain Marcus Rivera sat in his office and rubbed his tired eyes. The report in front of him was only 3 pages long, but it felt like the heaviest document he had ever read. Dr. Sarah Chen sat across from his desk, waiting for his response. She had spent the whole morning explaining her discovery. The test results were clear. The genetic evidence was perfect. There was no doubt about it. Zara Henderson, the young woman they had all known for years, was actually Princess Zayara of the Vexhari Empire. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" Captain Rivera asked for the 3rd time. "Yes, sir," Sarah replied. "I've run every test I can think of. I've checked and double-checked the equipment. I even asked Dr. Williams to verify the results without telling him what we were looking for. Everything confirms it." Captain Rivera stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see stars moving slowly past as the harmony traveled through space. Somewhere out there was the Vexhari Empire, and somewhere in that empire was an empress who thought her daughter was dead. "What do we know about the current political situation with the Vexhari?" he asked. Sarah pulled out another file. "I've been researching that too. It's not good, sir. The empire is having serious problems." She opened the file and began reading. "Empress Cathara is getting older, and she never had another child after the princess disappeared. Different groups in the empire are starting to argue about who should rule next. Some want the empress's sister to take over. Others want to choose a completely new royal family. And if they knew the real princess was alive, it could solve everything," Sarah said. "Or it could make things much worse. If some groups don't want the princess to return, they might try to stop her. They might even try to hurt her." Captain Rivera felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. This decision could affect not just Zara's life, but the peace between humans and the Vexhari Empire. "Have you told anyone else about this?" he asked. "No, sir. Only you and I know." "Good. Let's keep it that way for now. I need to think about this." But thinking time was something they didn't have much of. 2 hours later, the ship's communication officer called Captain Rivera to the bridge. "Sir, we're receiving urgent messages from Vexhari Space," the officer reported. "It sounds like there's fighting going on." Captain Rivera read the messages quickly. His face grew serious. "It started," he said quietly. The civil war that everyone had been afraid of was beginning. Different Vexhari groups were fighting each other. Some supported the Empress. Others wanted to remove her from power. The messages spoke of battles and destroyed cities. Captain Rivera called Sarah to his office again. "The situation has changed," he told her. "The Vexhari Empire is falling apart. We need to make a decision about Zara quickly." Meanwhile, Zara was having lunch with her adopted parents, Tom and Linda Henderson. She had no idea that her whole world was about to change. "Mom, Dad, I've been thinking about applying for the advanced navigation program," Zara said excitedly. "If I get accepted, I could become a ship's pilot in just 2 years." Linda smiled at her daughter. "That sounds wonderful, honey. You've always been good with spatial calculations?" Tom nodded. "Your mother's right. You have a natural talent for it. I think you'd make an excellent pilot." Zara felt warm and happy. She loved her parents and was grateful for the life they had given her. She had never wondered much about her past before the explorer found her. This was her family, and this was her home. At that moment, Captain Rivera's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Tom and Linda Henderson, please report to my office immediately. Bring Zara with you." The three of them looked at each other in confusion. It was unusual for the captain to call families to his office. "I wonder what this is about," Linda said. 20 minutes later, they were sitting in Captain Rivera's office with Dr. Chen. The captain looked very serious. "I need to share some important information with you," he began. "Dr. Chen has made a discovery about Zara's background." Zara felt her stomach tighten. She had always known she was adopted, but she had never wanted to know about her life before the Hendersons found her. "What kind of discovery?" Tom asked. Dr. Chen opened her file and showed them the test results. "Zara, I ran some routine medical tests on you after our recent visit to Vextos. The results showed that you're not human." Zara stared at her. "What do you mean I'm not human? Of course I'm human." "The genetic tests show that you're Vexhari," Sarah continued gently. "Not only that, but your DNA matches the royal family. Specifically, you're the daughter of Empress Cathara." The room went completely silent. Linda was the first to speak. "That's impossible. Zara is our daughter. She's human." "I know this is hard to accept," Captain Rivera said, "but the evidence is clear. Zara is the missing Vexhari princess that everyone thought was dead." Zara felt like the world was spinning around her. "But I don't feel like an alien princess. I feel like me. I feel human." "You are still you," Tom said, reaching over to hold her hand. Nothing changes that. But Zara knew that everything was changing. If she was really a Vexhari princess, what did that mean for her future? What did it mean for her family? "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Captain Rivera explained the situation in the Vexhari Empire. He told them about the civil war and the political problems. He explained that knowing the princess was alive could help stop the fighting. "But it's dangerous too," he added. "Some groups might not want you to return. They might see you as a threat to their plans." Zara felt overwhelmed. A few hours ago, her biggest worry had been getting into navigation school. Now she was being told she was an alien princess whose return home could stop a war or start a bigger one. "I need time to think," she said. "I understand," Captain Rivera replied. "But I'm afraid we don't have much time. The situation in the Vexhari Empire is getting worse every day. We need to decide what to do." Linda looked at her daughter with tears in her eyes. "Whatever you decide, Zara, we'll support you. You're our daughter, no matter what these tests say." Tom nodded. "She's right. Human or Vexhari, you're part of our family." Zara hugged her parents. She loved them so much, and the thought of leaving them hurt her heart. But she also thought about the Vexhari Empress, who had lost her daughter. She thought about all the people who were fighting and dying in the Civil War. "Can I learn more about the Vexhari?" she asked. "About their culture and their language? If I really am one of them, I should understand who they are." Captain Rivera smiled. "Of course. Dr. Chen has already started gathering information for you." As they left the captain's office, Zara felt like she was walking into a completely new life. She was still the same person on the inside, but everything else was different now. She was no longer just Zara Henderson, human girl with dreams of becoming a pilot. She was Princess Zayara of the Vexhari Empire, and her people needed her. The question was she brave enough to answer that call? 3 days had passed since Zara learned the truth about herself. She spent most of her time in the ship's library, reading everything she could find about the Vexhari people. The more she learned, the more amazed she became. The Vexhari lived in beautiful crystal cities that grew from the ground like flowers. They could create music with their voices that could heal sick people or help plants grow faster. Their society was based on harmony and balance. But she also learned about their problems. The Vexhari had strict rules about everything. They believed that everyone had a specific place in society and should never change from that place. They had complicated ceremonies for even simple things like eating dinner or greeting friends. "This is so different from how humans live," Zara said to herself as she read. Dr. Chen had been helping her learn. Every day they would sit together and go through Vexhari history and culture. Dr. Chen had also contacted some Vexhari scholars who lived on other human ships. They agreed to teach Zara through video calls. "Princess Zayara," said Professor Valeth during one of their lessons. He was an old Vexhari with silver skin and kind eyes. "You must understand that returning to your people will not be easy. You have lived as a human for many years. Our ways will seem strange to you." "They already do," Zara admitted. "Yesterday I learned that Vexhari princesses aren't supposed to laugh loudly or run in public places. But I love to laugh and run. Does that make me a bad princess?" Professor Valeth was quiet for a moment. "Perhaps," he said slowly. "You will not be the kind of princess our people expect. Perhaps you will be the kind of princess our people need." Meanwhile, Captain Rivera was dealing with bigger problems. The messages from Vexhari space were getting worse every day. The rebel groups were becoming stronger. They had taken control of several planets and were demanding that Empress Cathara step down. "Sir," Lieutenant Torres reported during the morning briefing, "we've received a direct message from the Vexhari rebels. They know about Zara." Captain Rivera felt his blood turn cold. "How is that possible? We haven't told anyone." "We're not," Sure, sir, but they're demanding that we turn her over to them. They say the Empress is too weak to rule and that they need the princess to start a new government. And what does the Empress say? She's also sent messages, sir. She's begging us to bring her daughter home safely. She says she's willing to make changes to the government if that's what it takes to have peace. Captain Rivera looked around the room at his officers. They were all waiting for his decision. He could turn Zara over to the rebels, or he could take her to the Empress, or he could keep her safe on the human ship and stay out of the Vex-Hari war completely. But then he remembered something important about being human. Humans didn't just solve problems. They solved them in the right way, with care for everyone involved. I have an idea, he said, but it's going to be dangerous, and it's never been tried before. That afternoon, Captain Rivera called a meeting with Zara and her family. Dr. Chen and the senior officers were also there. I've made a decision about what we're going to do, he announced. We're going to take Zara home to her mother, but we're going to do it the human way. What does that mean? Zara asked. It means we're not just going to drop you off and leave. We're going to escort you safely to the Vex-Hari homeworld. We're going to make sure both sides in this war have a chance to talk to you. And we're going to help you find a solution that works for everyone. Tom Henderson looked worried. Captain, that sounds very dangerous. What if both sides decide to attack your ship? That's a risk we'll have to take, Captain Rivera replied. But I believe that if we approach this with honesty and good intentions, we can help stop this war. Dr. Chen had been quiet during the meeting, but now she spoke up. Sir, I've been studying Vex-Hari history. They've never had a situation like this before. They don't know how to handle a princess who was raised by another species. This could actually work in our favor. How? Zara asked. Because you're not bound by all their old traditions, Dr. Chen explained. You can ask questions that no Vex-Hari would think to ask. You can suggest solutions that they would never consider. Over the next week, the Harmony began its journey toward Vex-Hari space. But it wasn't an easy trip. They had to travel through areas where rebel ships were patrolling. They had to avoid battles between different Vex-Hari groups. Captain Rivera showed his crew why humans were good at solving problems. Instead of trying to fight their way through, he used clever tactics. When they encountered rebel ships, he would offer to help repair their damaged vessels. When they met Imperial ships, he would share medical supplies. Why are you helping both sides? Asked Commander Zixara, a rebel leader who had boarded the Harmony to meet with them. Because both sides have people on them, Captain Rivera replied simply. And people deserve help when they need it, no matter which side they're on. This confused the Vex-Hari commander, but it also impressed her. She had never met humans before, and she was surprised by their kindness. During the journey, Zara continued learning about her heritage. But she also started thinking about how her human upbringing might help her people. Professor Valath, she said during one of their video lessons, why do Vex-Hari children have to choose their life path when they're only 10 years old? It has always been our way, the professor replied. It brings order and stability. But what if a child changes their mind? What if they discover they're good at something different? Professor Valath looked thoughtful. Such questions are not usually asked, Princess. Maybe they should be, Zara said. Humans believe that people can grow and change throughout their lives. They can try new things and discover new talents. Doesn't that make them stronger? The professor was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, You are asking very interesting questions, Princess. Perhaps when you return home you will help our people think about these things in new ways. As they got closer to Vex-Hari space, Zara felt nervous but also excited. She was starting to understand that being raised by humans wasn't a disadvantage. It was a gift that could help her bridge the gap between two very different ways of thinking. She looked out at the stars and thought about her two families. The Hendersons had given her love and freedom and taught her to question everything. Somewhere ahead, Empress Keth Ara was waiting for the daughter she had lost so many years ago. Zara didn't know what would happen when they finally met, but she knew one thing for sure: she would face whatever came next with both human courage and Vexhari grace. The ship continued its journey toward a reunion that could change the fate of an entire empire. And in the captain's chair, Marcus Rivera smiled. Sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem was to refuse to believe. It was impossible. That was the human way. The Harmony arrived at the edge of Vexhari space to find chaos. Burning ships floated in the darkness like dying stars. Battle debris created dangerous clouds of metal and crystal fragments. In the distance, the beautiful blue-green planet of Vexara Prime looked peaceful, but the space around it told a different story. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres reported, "we're receiving messages from both Rebel and Imperial fleets. They both want us to surrender Princess Zayara to them immediately." Captain Rivera studied the tactical display. Rebel ships controlled the outer system, while Imperial forces were trapped near the planet. Neither side looked like they were winning, but both sides looked desperate. "Open a channel to both fleets," he ordered. "Sir, that's not possible," Torres said. "They're not talking to each other." "Then we'll talk to both of them at the same time," Rivera replied. "Broadcast on all frequencies." A few minutes later, the main screen showed two different commanders. On the left was Admiral Kexoth of the Imperial Fleet, an older Vexhari with tired silver eyes. On the right was General Velani of the Rebel forces, younger and angry-looking. I am Captain Marcus Rivera of the human vessel Harmony," he began. "We are here on a diplomatic mission. We have someone with us who both of you want to meet." "The princess belongs with her people," Admiral Kexoth said firmly. "She should be returned to her mother, the rightful empress." "The princess belongs with a government that serves the people," General Velani argued. "The old empire has failed. We need new leadership." "She belongs wherever she chooses to be," Captain Rivera said quietly. "But first, she wants to speak to both of you." Zara had been listening from the bridge. She stepped forward, her heart pounding. She was wearing simple human clothes, not the fancy robes that Vexhari royalty usually wore. But when she spoke, her voice carried the musical quality of her people. "I am Zayara," she said, "or Zara, as my human family calls me. I know you are fighting over who should rule my people, but I have spent 15 years learning about a different way to live." Both commanders stared at her in surprise. She didn't look or sound like what they expected from a princess. "Among humans," Zara continued, "leaders are chosen by the people they serve. Governments exist to help everyone, not just the powerful. When there are problems, people work together to find solutions instead of fighting wars." General Velani laughed bitterly. "Pretty words, princess, but the real world doesn't work that way." "It does on human worlds," Zara replied. "I've seen it. I've lived it." Admiral Kexoth looked confused. "Princess, with respect, you are young. You don't understand the complexities of ruling an empire." "Maybe not," Zara admitted. "But I understand something else. I understand that this war is hurting innocent people. Children are losing their parents. Families are being separated. Cities are being destroyed. All because you can't agree on who should be in charge." She paused and looked directly at both commanders. "What if there was another way? What if instead of fighting over power, we shared it?" "What do you mean?" General Velani asked suspiciously. Zara took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been preparing for during the entire journey. "I propose a new kind of government," she said. "Keep the Empress as a symbol of our people's unity, but create elected councils to make the important decisions. Let the people choose their local leaders. Create laws that protect everyone's rights, not just the nobles." The two commanders were silent for a long moment. That's never been done before," Admiral Kexoth said slowly. Many good things have never been done before, Captain Rivera added. That doesn't mean they can't work. General Velani shook her head. Even if we agreed to try this, how would we make it work? The two sides hate each other now. There's too much blood between us. This was the moment Captain Rivera had been waiting for. That's where we can help, he said. The harmony can serve as neutral ground. Both sides can send representatives here to work out the details. No weapons, no threats, just people talking about solutions. And why should we trust humans to be neutral? General Velani demanded. Because we have no interest in ruling your empire, Rivera replied. We only want to help our friend get home safely and see your people find peace. Zara stepped forward. Again. Please, she said, give me a chance to prove that there's a better way. If my ideas don't work, you can go back to fighting. But if they do work, think of all the lives we could save. Admiral Kexoth was the first to speak. I will need to consult with the Empress. And I will need to talk to the Rebel Council, General Velani said. You have 6 hours, Captain Rivera announced. After that, we're going to the planet with or without your agreement. Princess Zayara has the right to see her mother. The communications ended, and the bridge fell silent. Do you think they'll agree? Zara asked. I don't know, Rivera replied honestly. But you did something brave today. You offered them hope instead of just another fight. Over the next few hours, messages flew back and forth between the ships. Some Vexhari were angry about the human proposal. Others were curious. A few were excited about the possibility of ending the war. Dr. Chen worked with Zara to prepare for the negotiations. They studied examples of how humans had solved similar problems in their own history. Remember, Dr. Chen said, you're not trying to force them to become human. You're trying to show them how some human ideas might help solve Vexhari problems. Tom and Linda Henderson stayed close to their daughter. They were proud of her courage, but they were also worried about her safety. Are you sure about this? Linda asked. Once you go down to that planet, everything will change. I know, Mom, Zara replied, but I can't stay hidden while my people are suffering. If there's a chance I can help bring peace, I have to try. Finally, the answers came back. Both sides agreed to send representatives to the Harmony for talks. They also agreed to a temporary ceasefire while the negotiations took place. It's working, Zara whispered to herself. But Captain Rivera knew that the hardest part was still ahead. Getting people to agree to talk was one thing. Getting them to actually find solutions was much more difficult. As the first shuttles arrived, from both fleets, he hoped that human diplomacy and Zara's unique perspective would be enough to prevent more bloodshed. The fate of an empire now rested in the hands of a young woman who had been raised by humans but belonged to the stars. The negotiations were about to begin. The negotiations aboard the Harmony had lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Representatives from both the Imperial and Rebel forces sat around a large table in the ship's conference room. Captain Rivera and his diplomatic team had worked, without rest, to help the two sides find common ground. Zara had been amazing during the talks. She asked simple questions that made everyone think differently. When the Imperial representative said that common people couldn't make good decisions, she asked why. When the rebels said that all nobles were evil, she asked if they had ever actually talked to any. Slowly, piece by piece, they had built an agreement. The Vexhari Empire would become a constitutional monarchy. Empress Kethara would remain as the symbolic head of state, but elected councils would make the laws. Every citizen would have the right to vote and to speak freely. Local communities would choose their own leaders. Most importantly, there would be no punishment for anyone who had fought in the Civil War. Both sides would work together to rebuild their damaged worlds. It's done, announced General Velani, who had become much friendlier during the talks. We have an agreement. Admiral Kexoth nodded. The Empress has approved all the terms. She is eager to see her daughter and begin this new chapter for our people. Zara felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. In a few hours, she would meet her birth mother for the first time in 20 years. She would also be taking on responsibilities she had never imagined. "Are you ready for this?" Tom Henderson asked his adopted daughter. The whole Henderson family had decided to accompany Zara to the planet's surface for the historic meeting. "I think so," Zara replied. "I'm scared, but I'm also excited. Thank you for being here with me." Linda hugged her daughter tightly. "We'll always be here for you, honey, no matter what happens." The journey to Vexara Prime took 2 hours by shuttle. As they descended through the atmosphere, Zara pressed her face to the window and gasped in wonder. The Vexhari cities really did look like they were made of crystal. Tall spires rose from the ground like frozen music, catching and reflecting the light of the planet's twin suns. The shuttle landed in the capital city's main plaza. Thousands of Vexhari had gathered to witness the return of their lost princess. They stood in perfect silence, their silver eyes watching every movement. At the top of the crystal steps that led to the imperial palace, a figure waited alone. Empress Kethara was tall and graceful, with the silver hair and pale blue skin of her people. She wore simple robes instead of the elaborate costumes that Vexhari rulers usually wore. Her hands were clasped in front of her, and even from a distance Zara could see that they were shaking. Captain Rivera stepped out of the shuttle first, followed by his diplomatic team. Then came the Hendersons. Finally, Zara appeared in the doorway. A soft musical sound rose from the crowd. It was the traditional Vexhari song of welcome, sung by thousands of voices in perfect harmony. But Zara noticed something different about it. The song was changing as it went along, becoming more complex and beautiful than any traditional version she had heard. Her people were already adapting, already showing that they could embrace change while honoring their past. Zara began walking across the plaza toward the palace steps. Each step felt important, like she was walking from one life into another. She was no longer just Zara Henderson, the human girl who dreamed of being a pilot. But she wasn't quite Princess Zayara either. She was something new, something that had never existed before. As she climbed the crystal steps, she could see her birth mother more clearly. Empress Kethara's eyes were filled with tears, but she was trying to maintain the formal dignity that her position required. When Zara reached the top of the steps, she stopped. For a moment, mother and daughter just looked at each other. "My child," the Empress whispered in the musical language of their people. "I thought I had lost you forever." "I was never lost," Zara replied in the same language, though her accent was strange from years of speaking human languages. "I was just taking a different path home." That was when Empress Kethara's royal composure finally broke. Tears streamed down her silver cheeks as she opened her arms. Zara stepped forward and embraced her birth mother for the first time in 20 years. The crowd's singing grew louder and more joyful. Even the rebels who had come to witness the ceremony were wiping their eyes. "You've grown so much," the Empress said, holding her daughter tightly. "You're so strong and brave. I can see that you've been loved and well cared for." She looked over Zara's shoulder at Tom and Linda Henderson. "Thank you," she said in careful human English. "Thank you for raising my daughter and bringing her home to me." "She's our daughter too," Linda replied with tears in her own eyes. "We hope she can be part of both families." "Of course," the Empress said. "Family is not just about blood. It's about love and care and sacrifice. You will always be welcome in our empire." The formal ceremony that followed was unlike anything. In Vexhari history, instead of the ancient coronation rituals, they created something new. Zara stood before her people and spoke about her vision for their future. She talked about the importance of both tradition and change. She promised to serve not just as their princess, but as a bridge between the old ways and new possibilities. General Vellani and Admiral Kexoth stood together on the palace steps, symbolizing the unity between former enemies. Captain Rivera represented the human alliance that had helped make peace possible. "Today we begin a new age," Zara announced to the crowd. "An age where every voice matters, where every person has value, where we solve our problems with words instead of weapons." The celebration lasted for hours. Vexahari from across the empire sang songs of joy and hope. Human diplomats shared stories of their own struggles to build fair governments. Children from both species played together in the palace gardens. As the twin suns set over the Crystal City, Zara found herself on a palace balcony with both sets of parents. The Hendersons and Empress Kethara were talking quietly, sharing stories about the daughter they all loved. "I'm proud of you," Tom Henderson said to Zara. "You found a way to bring people together instead of tearing them apart." "I learned that from you and Mom," Zara replied. "You taught me that families can be built with love, not just born with blood." Empress Kethara nodded. "And you have taught me that sometimes the best way to honor tradition is to improve upon it." Captain Rivera approached the group. "Princess, we'll be leaving tomorrow, but I wanted you to know that this mission has been an honor. You've shown everyone that peace is possible when people are willing to try new ideas." "Thank you, Captain," Zara said. "The human way of solving problems has saved my people. I'll never forget that." As the stars came out over Vexara Prime, Zara looked up at the sky and thought about all the worlds where humans and other species were learning to work together. The galaxy was full of different peoples with different ways of thinking, but they all shared the same hopes for peace and happiness. She was no longer a lost princess. She was a bridge between worlds, a symbol of what was possible when different species chose cooperation over conflict. The alien queen had wept as her daughter stepped into her arms, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. The future was bright with possibility.